All right, so we're in week 12 of class, the second time we started this. And explain a little bit earlier, if you've seen the syllabus, we're supposed to talk about the church planter characteristics tonight. But I mixed that up when I made the syllabus. That's actually next week. Tonight is capabilities. The textbook reading was right, the lectures are right, the slides and everything, but I just had it titled wrong on the syllabus. That's all it is. So it's just a change of one word. But we're going to talk about kind of what you're capable of doing, and really to talk about what are you capable of. You got to look at kind of wiring, gifts, spiritual gifts, your strengths. What are you good at doing? And so this lecture really applies in a lot of ways. You can take this and apply it across a wide array of pretty much any kind of ministry. And we're going to look at that in just a second. But we're going to apply it to church planting specifically for the sake of tonight. So here's a definition from the Redeemer Church Planting Manual. What is a church planter? They say a Christian leader leads from character before skill. Character is far more important than skills in Christian leadership. But tonight we're going to talk about the skills because they're both important. Okay, but as we're going to see next week, character is far more important than skills. Yes.
That's Tim Keller's church, right?
Yeah, this is Tim Keller. They're Redeemer Church planting, Redeemer Church Network. They do a lot of planting. They got like a thick manual they make all their planters go through, kind of in a training sense, and I got a copy of it in my office. Well, I used to have an office. No, did not get him to sign it or my other book. Really sad. But a Christian leader leads from character before skill. So the next 2 weeks we're talking about character and we're talking about skill. Okay. So next week we're going to look at the elder qualifications in 1 Timothy and Titus, and some other portions of Scripture. We'll look at that. So that's going to be talking to character and some other things as well. Some more, I guess, things outside mentioned in the Bible. But we are going to talk about skill tonight. What are you skilled at doing? And we're going to kind of lay a foundation, lay a framework for kind of understanding. So what are you skilled or capable? That's why you notice I like to alliterate. I never thought I would, but I like to. It's really fun, actually. When you do it well, it's fun. So let's talk about capability. So let me, if I get my slides to go. There we go. 3 kinds of church planters, okay? So we're talking about wiring. Now remember, in this class, yes, this is a church planting degree program. This class is disciple making and church planting, that we focus more on the former than the latter as far as time and emphasis, because we have a whole class, if you take it next semester, that's 100% church planting and revitalization. All right, but we talk about different kinds of leaders. Last week when we talked about calling, remember we said, not everyone is called to be a lead church planter, but what? Everyone is called a church planter. So I want to go through tonight, and your textbook reading, chapter 5, actually takes this in a little bit different way, expounds this even a lot better. This is actually an updated chapter to the original one. So some of this is actually new. So when I was reviewing it yesterday, one of the sections actually is a brand new section, not in the first one. So I got to read it for the first time. It's actually really, really helpful and good for me personally. Kind of helped me understand a little bit about myself. But talking about leadership models is what Stetzer talks about in chapter 5. And he gives model 1 as the apostolic harvest church planter. That's our number 1 as well. And he also gives biblical and historical and contemporary examples of each, which is really helpful to kind of know what it looks like and how does it work today. Second model is the founding pastor. I call that missional pastor. And you will see why in a second. And there's kind of subcategories of each of these, but these are the kind of 3 broad speaking ones. And I'm finding out that I am more the missional pastor, but I have a lot of wiring toward the apostolic, and you'll see why in a second, what that kind of looks like. But the founding pastor, he gives some other like sub-examples, which one is the planted pastor, which think of Rick Warren, Saddleback. Is that the contemporary example he gave? No, he gave another one. But basically, Rick Warren's planted Saddleback Community Church and has been there for 30 years. But they've planted dozens of other churches and a lot of good stuff and whatnot. So most of the church planting, I would say, is probably under this kind of founding pastor where a guy goes and plants. But after a year, 3, 4, 5, can he call himself a church planter anymore? No, he's not, because a church planter implies that you're continuously doing it. Okay, so most guys are a planter for a season, then they transition to a what I would say is a missional pastor, where they're just focused on, hey, we want to plant more churches. And then,
Not a church.
Not a church, but multiple. Yep. The next one, which is the new part, this is a new section of this book where I'm finding myself more wired for, is the entrepreneurial founding planter, which basically means get one started, but you don't really stick around for a long time. I don't know if mine's some kind of like ADD or something, but I'm thinking, man, after 3-4 years, we better have someone else already leading our church, and I'm moving on to the next community to start another one, and then moving on. That's kind of a rarity in North America because it's usually year 3 and 4. Between 3 and 5 years is typically when a new church becomes established enough to pay your pastor's full-time salary. And so when they raise funds, it's usually, hey, 3 to 5 years, we want to be self-supporting, the church is paying my salary. But if every 3 to 5 years you're moving, then you're restarting from scratch again and again and again. So I'm wired that way, but it's going to be tough to take care of my family. So a lot of guys doing this are bivocational, just by necessity, which I won't be able to be in Canada for the first few years, but it may be the approach that we take eventually. And then the third model is team planting. And so we're going to talk about that as well. So so he gives those three, which is kind of what I've patterned under, but just notice that for the number 2, there's kind of 2 categories, 2 subcategories. So let's talk first of all about the apostolic missionary. Now, when you think of an apostle, who do we think of?
Paul.
All right, we think of Paul. So how do you see Paul planting churches in the book of Acts?
One place, planting, getting someone to lead, and then moving on.
Yep, he was plant, raise up a leader, move on. Go into a community, go into a city, evangelize, disciple, gather into a group. Usually they were house churches that were kind of a network of house churches. Identify, assess, and raise up a leader. Have him take it over, and they moved on. So the longest, do you know how long was the longest stint? 3 years. 3 to 4 is somewhere in Ephesus.
3. Do the book study.
You did the book study. Hunger told you that, right? Yeah. So 3 to 4 years or so in Ephesus was his longest one. One place, I can't remember where it was, Thessalonica or maybe Philippi, is only like 18 months. One was even shorter than that. All right. So he basically never stayed long enough for what we would say for a church to get established. But when you're planning a house church and you're overseas and you're in a village and the chief has invited you to come and start the church in his house because the new god in the area is better than all the tribal gods, and you're basically starting a house church, you can be gone fairly soon, within a year or so, if you have trained and raised up a leader to lead a kind of a small gathering of 12 to 15 believers, and it's a church. So really, when it comes to the 3 kinds of church planters, it always ties in to the kind or model of church that you plant as well. So since this is a North American church planting class, we want to use more of those examples, but we see the apostolic done more so in international missions right now. So anything that Mr. Hayes is teaching about church planting, probably 90 to 95% of what he is saying and emphasizing will be the more apostolic missionary approach. The IMB right now, which is part of the Southern Baptist Convention, our international church planting missions group, they don't do anything but the apostolic missionary approach. They rarely use any of the others. They do a lot of team planting, but the idea is you go into an area, you share the gospel, you find a person of peace, it's very much a Luke 10, you raise them up, and then they quickly take over leading a small group of believers, which is a church, 10, 12, 15, 20 people or so. So Matt Willis, who you hung out with, his job was to be an apostolic missionary training the local pastors, and he became a trainer of the trainers. Okay, so he was highly apostolic in what he did, where he was going from community, village, and city doing that. So we don't really see that a lot in America. Why do you think so?
Are you still talking about apostolic?
Yeah, so why don't we see the first one happen a lot in the U.S.? Income. What's it? So define a church nowadays.
A building where people gather and listen to music.
Oh, and preaching, not just music, but yeah. So
here's the steeple. Open it up. Here's all the people.
Exactly. We just went back to 5th grade Sunday school. So, anyways, so we don't see it a lot because here in North America, in the U.S., we typically think of church as a larger gathering of people in a building, a worship set, whether it's with piano and organ, more traditional, or a band, whichever. There's preaching, communion, there's different elements. Then they have some type of small group structure ministry. They have serving and evangelism, different things happening, the functions of the church. But the house church is not big in North America right now as far as percentage of people involved in it. The majority of Christians in America and Canada are involved in some type of more established church, not a house church. So there are some really cool, really exciting house church movements happening across the country right now. I'm good friends with the one who's doing it in Louisville, Kentucky, and they're like a network of I think 18 or 19 house churches right now, and they get together. I think quarterly or every 4 months they get together as all they rent out a church's sanctuary on like a Saturday night and have a joint worship service. They only do 3 a year because they're for their house church, a network of house churches, but they have elders and pastors. It's a very interesting kind of dynamic, and so there's a few of those happening, but they're not as far as percentage happen. But if you go somewhere in northern India, Pakistan, you basically see nothing but the apostolic because it leads more toward a house church model in most instances. But you think of Afghanistan, Pakistan, northern India, do you see church buildings with Christian crosses on top?
I mean, you can, because some of those places are technically a freedom of religion. It's just they hardly have, like, that's a very rare thing.
It's a very rare thing, right? And so most of those models, because of safety and because of culture, the house church is far better. So the apostolic missionary fits more. But here in the U.S., we see a lot more of the missional pastor for the second one, which the missional pastor is, like I said a little before, think of like a Rick Warren or one of those types who they do the work of a church planter, they move to a new community, they gather a small group, they get a team together, they start evangelizing, start making disciples, start raising up some leaders, they outgrow the basement of their home, and so they have 2 home groups going. But then they say, hey, we got 50 people, let's start meeting on a Sunday morning in a rented space. They rent out somewhere, they start growing, they have 100 people, 200, so on and so on and so forth. And that missional pastor, he was functioning as a church planter doing all of that type of work. Remember, church planting is an evangelism strategy, right? It's the greatest, most effective evangelistic method known under heaven, okay? So it leads to new converts, but a missional pastor is one who says, God has called me to stay and pastor this congregation. So the majority of the new churches here in Winston-Salem that have been started, and I can't say for the ones that are just now getting started because they're just in their first few months, but the ones that have been started in the last 5-7 years are all kind of the more missional pastor approach. The guy, I think at Rebo Church, they're guys we've had speak in chapel for, good friends of mine. I think they came 5-6 years ago, maybe close to 6 now. They moved up here, they had a team, they started meeting, and Nathan is still the pastor of Rebo Church. But they have helped plant other churches, both here and internationally. Right? So he's a missional thinking pastor in that, yes, we want to be a part of multiplying more churches, but he is not the guy who's going to go out and do that work of being a church planter again. So if I talk to him now and say, are you a church planter? He goes, I was, but now I'm a pastor. So there is a difference. There is a difference in mentality and the task that you're given. Now, most planters become pastors here in the U.S. That's kind of just the reality. But as we just saw in the book, there are some who can't really stay long enough. So it's almost this hybrid of the missional pastor with the apostolic. Apostolic may only be in a certain place for a few months. Now, my heart for Calgary is to get a church started, yes, but if we want to reach a city, we can't just stop with one church. So it may be that in the first 3 years, for year 4 coming up, if we have a leader who we have raised up and who can take over the pastoring part, that's his gifting, we can pass it on, let him do it, and maybe we move to another place and get a new group started. Maybe some of them go with us or whatever their approach is, but also at the same time, I want to be investing in and sending out leaders as well. So it may not be we have the right guy to shepherd that specific congregation, and I need to stay there for another year, 2, 3, 4, however long. But we've planted out 6 or 7 churches in that time frame. Okay, so it's still the missional pastor, but a little bit more of a wiring for the apostolic. And the team planter is exactly what it sounds like. It's a team of people who basically say, hey, us 3 couples, us 4 couples, moving to an area together, equally sharing a lot of role and responsibility. And team planting, usually the missional pastor, in the number 2 missional pastor is usually kind of a stronger personality. You know, you think of those who have, planted churches and, are still kind of there. You think of like a Matt Chandler type personality, Mark Driscoll. You think of a George McDonald. You think of Perry Noble, which he's out of the ministry right now. Think of Darren Patrick, who's also out, but kind of the same. They had strong personalities, so they were the lead pastor in a sense, but they always had a team with them. You never go and get a 5,000 member church all by yourself. It always requires a team. The difference in the team approach is that there's no kind of lead person over the others. It's more of a co-pastoring, equal responsibility, And so a lot of times the team will kind of have an apostolic mindset where the team will go into this village, do the work together to get something established, get it going, and then move to another place. Okay, so all these approaches are really up to how God has wired you. So let's talk a little bit more. We're going to dive in more into this as well, but kind of look. I kind of gave that already. So here's the slides I just said. Apostolic missionary starts churches, raises up leaders from the harvest, moves to a new church. Think of Apostle Paul, a little more international settings. If you review these for the test, you will need to know that, of course. Missional pastor starts a church, acts as a church planter for a short time, remains long-term to pastor a new church. So there's that transition. But they often want to become a church planting church. So here are some examples. Rick Warren, Darren Patrick, even Tim Keller. You see these more in a North American Western setting. You see these in London. You'll see these in Western Europe, Paris, Germany, Frankfurt. So our church, Calvary, has a partnership in Frankfurt, Germany, and they have very much a missional pastor mindset because they're not a village, they're a large city. So they're kind of taking that approach. And then the team planting, group of disciple makers relocate to an area to start a new church. May or may not have a lead pastor. That's the kind of sharing, the co-equal type. Missional community and house simple churches are usually how they flesh out because they're already a small group and they just kind of replicate that DNA that they modeled. But you see these in both international and North American settings as they kind of move in hybrid with each other. Any questions on either of those? Clear as mud? Awesome. So let's go. We actually open up to Ephesians 4. So someone read Ephesians 4, 11 through, let's just go through 13. Nico, you got it. You work at Lifeway.
All right.
Your local life.
It's the local life of Christians. You're right. You're right. All right. Ephesians 4, verses 11 through, you said 14?
Keep reading until I say stop.
All right, cool. And he personally gave some of the apostles, some prophets, some evangelists, some pastors and teachers for the training of the saints in the work of the ministry, to build up the body of Christ, until we all reach unity in the faith and knowledge of God's Son, growing into a mature man with the stature measured by Christ's fullness.
That's good. That's good. All right, so God personally, is that the HCSB?
Yeah, it is.
The holy.
Don't even try. So I like how it says that.
Conservative Southern Baptist translation.
There you go. So I like that translation that said he personally gave, because the Holy Spirit is a very personal being. FYI, we treat him like he's not existent in our churches, but Holy Spirit is alive and well, and is who Jesus sent to propel the church to change the world in the book of Acts, and is still the one who is leading us in changing the world right now. So the Spirit is living in us. So God's Spirit, God himself, he personally gave to the church. Think of it. Do you ever think about the people of the church, yourself included, as a gift to the church? No, we think of people as, oh, we need more tithers, we need to fill a room, we need more volunteers, we need another pastor. We don't actually think of God has actually given us. That's profound. No, it's not really that profound. God has given us each other. So when he says he's given the church apostles, prophets, evangelists, shepherd, pastors, same Greek word, same thing. I like apest instead of apept. It's easier to say. That's why it's apest, Ephesians 4. So are you a pest? No, anyways. But each of these are different roles in the church. Remember, we're talking about capabilities, talking about skill. Each of these comes with a different set of skills, right? And if you've ever taken some kind of like spiritual gifts inventory or spiritual gifts analysis, I think I have mine on here. I think I showed mine. I think so. But the spiritual gifts test really is helpful to know how you even fit in these categories. So some would say that this is only church leadership, that pastors are wired as apostles, prophets, evangelists, shepherd, and teacher. I think there's a valid argument for saying this is only that, but I don't think God only gave the gift of leaders to a church. So I think every single member, every man, woman, and child is part of engaging and loving every man, woman, and child. So every person in the church is involved in the ministry, because he gave them these people what? For the equipping of saints for the work of the ministry. Well, the work of the ministry is going to funnel people back into the roles of apostle, prophet, evangelist, shepherd, teacher. So I would translate it and lean more towards, this is talking about everybody in the church. This is not spiritual gifts. Those are different. This is roles, okay? The spiritual gifts fit underneath these, okay? So apostle is sent to establish. Think of Paul. He moved to a city, he established it. That was his job, his function. He was skilled at doing that. Right? I would say an apostle is very much like our more modern day church planter, especially the apostolic missionary church planter mindset. That's what I would say more as an apostle. Do I believe that there is the office of apostle? No. I believe there's the role of the apostle. Very big difference. Now, some will disagree with that because they want to get nitty-gritty with the Greek and cessationism and that sort of thing and speaking in tongues and whatnot. Don't lump everything in that healing, miracles, and tongues are all done, so therefore so are apostles. Because it's a role now. He's not talking about Apostle Paul here. He's talking about the role or the function of an apostle. Okay, a prophet knows the direction. A prophet knows where the church is going. An evangelist champions the cause. Now this is all from Alan Hirsch in his book. I think it's the Forgotten Ways book. Oh, cool. Okay, text from a friend. Anyways, the evangelist champions the cause. They're the ones who are leading others in the church to share the gospel, and they're proclaiming. Often, here's what the gospel is. Here is why we are part of this. The shepherd, though, is what we would normally see as a kind of a small town pastor. He just loves and cares for God's people. He's the tender shepherd that is guiding and counseling and walking with and teaching and helping, that sort of thing. So often the shepherd teacher is usually put together, and that shepherd teacher is usually what we think of, especially in North America, as a pastor. We think of him as a shepherd teacher. But what about the ape? What about the apostle and the prophet and evangelist? So sometimes what you have is the one who is best wired and skilled in just sticking with that congregation for 20, 30 years, they are shepherd teachers. Okay, so go back. So I grew up in an independent Baptist framework and then became Southern Baptist when my dad took a position there. But I remember when the evangelist would come to town and he would have the revival meeting at our church. And I would go to those all the time. Okay, I'll share a funny story. So I was once saved on accident.
How old was this?
I was 16 or 17.
Oh,
So she was my ex-girlfriend at the time, the girl I dated, I think 10th and 11th grade. Her grandpa was a pastor of a small independent Baptist church in our hometown, and so I would go, and my dad was a pastor at a Southern Baptist church just right down the road, so I would go to my church Sunday morning and go with her and her family every Sunday night. That was just our routine. I dated her for like a year, but we broke up, and so anyways, it was a good thing. She broke up with me twice, and so we started dating again later. Done, all that's done. So the final breaking point was I stupidly asked the question. Jill laughs at this all the time, my wife. This girl's name was Megan. We were coming back from the movie, and it was a 30-minute drive to the nearest theater, and it was awkward silence. I didn't know what to say. It was just one of those nights, and we'd been dating for a while, so it's like she had something to talk about. And so I just made a statement like, hey, if you weren't dating me, who'd you be dating? She's like, I don't think about that. I don't. I said, I'd probably be dating Jill. Don't ever do that.
Oh, Justin.
Guys, don't ever say that. So that actually, I know that was bad. So I got the silent treatment for 2 weeks, and then she broke up with me. But before that happened, her church was hosting. So it was in between it was in between our two dating times. So I go to her church. They have a revival starting that Sunday night through Wednesday. All right, yeah, I'm going through the real story. So I was still trying. I guess I can't remember. I think I was trying to get back with her. We had just broken in the middle, and I was trying to, whatever. So I get there a little bit late. I think her brother had actually invited me. Her brother was like 2 years younger, and he and I, we hung out and whatnot. And so anyways, so I show up to Sunday night to try to, get to be around or whatever. Well, it's one of those kind of fiery, Bible thumping, hell-raising type pastors. I mean, it was just boom, 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 and he was just letting us have it. It was kind of classic. So that evangelist mindset. So get to the invitation time, and I was tired. And, it was he preached for like an hour. It was super long. I had zoned out 15 minutes into it, so I was just trying to stay awake, really, and try not to laugh at some of his mannerisms. I can remember his face, which is a little bit scary. So anyways, we get to the invitation time, and he just draws it out. Because, there's only like 25 people, small church, 25, 30 people in the room. And when no one responds during the invitation time, because A, it's a room full of Christians. That's the reality of most revivals. It's not supposed to be that way, but typically it is. It's a room full of Christians, so there's no one there to get saved. And so he's just dragging on the invitation, and I fall asleep. Well,
Oh,
because no one, was coming down, he started asking those questions like, if you know, the Bible is God's word, and you want to stand on that your whole life, raise your hand if you were. And I sat on the very back row, and so I was kind of in and out of this sleep, and I heard him say, "Oh, just raise your hand." I thought it was one of those, and so I put my hand up. I'm like, I believe Jesus, whatever, and I'm half asleep. The question he asked was, who wants to come down and receive Christ as their Savior? I missed that part in my slumber, so I put my hands up. Well, then he keeps going. I'm like, man, this guy, and I have head down, eyes closed, head bowed, eyes closed, the whole thing. So I'm like, man, he's dragging this out. So I peek up, and the guy is staring. I mean, bullet line right at me. And I'm in the very back of this church. He's just staring me down. He's like, we are not stopping this invitation until that one person who's here who needs to come down. I'm like, what question he just asked? I mean, immediately it hit me. That was this question. I'm like, oh, okay. What do I do now? He's going to keep doing this invitation until I come down. And I'm like, so I feel sorry for all these people. And so I get up and I go down. So I've been a believer for like 5 years at this point. And so I walk down the aisle, and I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, what am I going to? So I go down. I did a little Tim Tebow at the altar, and I get down, and I'm like, okay, God, don't know exactly what, because I didn't figure out exactly the question he asked until the ex-girlfriend told me. She kept clarifying. So at this point, I was like, I still don't know exactly what he asked. And I was like, so I start kneeling. I'm like, Jesus, I'm here. Don't know why, but the guy scared me. And I get up, and all of a sudden, he's like, hey, man, we got a new brother in the kingdom. Like, it's her family is on the front row. They always sit on the front row. And they're just like this whole time they thought I was a Christian. And so they're like, who is this guy? He's been deceiving us all this time. And I'm like, thank you, and all that stuff. And so, anyway, we end the service, and they come up afterwards, like, come greet this new brother. I'm like, shaking hands and stuff. And I'm like, man, they know I'm a preacher's kid. They know me. I've been attending their church every Sunday night for a year. I knew them all by name. They knew me by name. They even asked me to pray one Sunday night. And so, anyway, they would come down. We didn't know. I'm like, I didn't either. So, anyways, I told the girl's family came up to like, so, I'm like, I was asleep. What did I raise my hand for? They're like, you just got saved. I'm like, praise Jesus, third time's a charm, I guess. So anyways, that was an event. That's kind of what we yeah, that would never happen there. You guys are too boring. You don't believe in calling people to repentance. So,
no, we don't believe that some guy's going to tell us, hey, I'll give you Jesus. You can receive him from him.
I'm just kidding. Anyways, so that's a too long of a story to explain. That's kind of what we have been thinking of an evangelist. But in the Bible, an evangelist is not so much the one who travels and speaks at revival services. That's how, in the last 60, 80 years, a lot of that has really worked. I mean, you think of Billy Graham, and you think of D.L. Moody and Billy Sunday, those guys. They were these traveling evangelists who, they shared the gospel, thousands responded. Many, many people are in God's kingdom right now because of evangelists who traveled around. But this is a gift for a local church as well. So instead of traveling around, what's it like to have the gift of an evangelist at your church? And it may not be the pastor of your church. It may not be an associate pastor of evangelism and missions like what we have at our church. So anyways, these are two different kind of categories. Your top three, apostle, prophet, evangelist, are really used more in the church planter sense. Okay, so a church planter usually is tapping into being an apostle, a prophet, and evangelist because they need to find somewhere to go. They're going to a new place they're sent to establish. They kind of know they have this vision for what God wants to do. Our vision for Calgary is to saturate Calgary with the gospel of Christ. And so to see that happen, we know that we have to multiply disciples, leaders, and churches in order to see gospel saturation happen. So I'm, in a way, a prophetic type thinker and role in this way because I am leading a new group of people toward that end goal. And I also have to be an evangelist. I have to champion the cause and share the gospel verbally like it's going out of style. So I have to function as that role. But when a church is established, the bottom two, shepherd and teacher, come into play a lot more. Okay, so what I'm saying is these are roles in the church. I think you need all of these happening in your church because once we get established, I don't want to just transition to a shepherd teacher and never ever again have anyone who's not an apostle, prophet, evangelist. Why? we'll get stagnant. We won't plant, we won't multiply, we won't expand, we won't do anything because I'm content with just shepherding people God has given me instead of actually multiplying new churches and things. So any questions about the APEST thing? There's an online tool that if you actually go and actually fill out some kind of survey question, it'll tell you what you're a little more wired for. I think I did it, and I am AP. Yeah, but they're my two highest, or A and P.
Do you
We
have
should all
that?
take a quiz right now.
I was about to say.
Yeah.
You should take that.
Actually,
I'm very interested.
I think I linked to it in Blackboard.
Would you go to Blackboard?
Hey, whenever we get done with this lecture, just remind me, I got links in Blackboard. It's not shown yet because it's tied to the old video that I had. But I think it has how to do those survey. It has a thing about APEST, and that actually might be it. So remind me, and then we'll get on to Blackboard. All right, let's talk about spiritual gifting. Remember, we're talking about capabilities. Well, spiritual gifting is your God-given capabilities. All right. So you know, I really do think that when a person is saved, God actually does uniquely give each of us some of these gifts. I don't think you find one person who has received them all. But whenever I took a survey, now I took this probably 3 or 4 years ago when I did. You can't find it online. When I found a really good one online that I like, and I had to do another one for my assessment. But usually when mine come out, leadership, teaching, apostleship, and evangelism are always my top 3, 4. It always has been teaching and evangelism especially. Yeah, there's a test. It takes like 10 minutes to do online. You answer a bunch of questions and kind of says, and it gives you like a rating, like, you know, a number scale for apostle. And so like I'm 34 apostle, 32 evangelist, and like literally serving and mercy, I'm like 2.2 because like I'm really bad at serving people and being merciful. It's really bad. My wife, she has exhortation and knowledge and wisdom. She's really, really good at discerning and thinking and reading people. I'm not. I'll trust you. It is surprising I have not been scammed online by Prince Abdullah Balaka from some made-up country and somewhere. Someone was scamming things. I actually got that email. I'm like, He says he'll give me 80% of the money that the prince has left me. That's a good deal, Anyways, my wife is very discerning, but she's really good. Or their discernment is there as well. She's really good at also exhortation. She's good at encouraging people. That's really her gift. And not on here. I don't know why it's not on here, but hospitality. That might be kind of, I think, serving. I think that's kind of put with serving. Sometimes they call it hospitality. But my wife is really good at just being hospitable. She's really good. But she doesn't want to be in front of people teaching, so to speak. So that's not her gifting. She's not so much an apostle, visionary thinker. That's me. I'm more the evangelist, breaking new conversations and sharing and things. So she and I tag team really well whenever I can be the extrovert and go meet a new person and welcome them to dinner, and she makes sure our home environment and everything is conducive for a really good gospel conversation. So we work together to evangelize together. It's really cool. So these were the top 6 whenever I took this test, and most of these I think are pretty much the same. So that's spiritual gifting. I think I'll make sure there's a link on there. I want to talk and kind of end on this, the idea of prophet, priest, and king. Now remember, we're all talking about capability, skill type things, so these all kind of lend into that. But think about the roles that Jesus served in the big picture sense. He was our true prophet. He was the better Elijah, the better Isaiah. He was our true priest. He's better than Aaron. Read Hebrews, right? But he's also our true king. He's better than David. Okay. So in the Bible, you see him fulfilling all these roles of prophet, priest, and king. And I'm not sure exactly who kind of put this together, but there were some kind of ecclesiology leaders and thinkers about this. Started thinking, wait a second. What if we took the roles of Christ, prophet, priest, and king, and applied them to the pastors and leaders of our church? So think through what you might be. So the pastors, pledges of our church work best together if their gifting and skills are maximized and their roles designated by gifting and calling. Okay? Christ fulfilled the roles of prophet, priest, and king, and now I contend he is the only human who could do so effectively. Basically, what I'm trying to say is, I am not good at being both prophet, priest, and king and do all those things well. Anyone want to guess what I'm more wired at?
Prophet.
Prophet. Priest is a shepherd. That's that shepherd teacher. I'm really bad at that. No, not really bad at teaching. I'm bad at shepherding. My dad is a shepherd. If you stub your toe at 3 a.m., he's at the hospital with you for 18 hours. That's my dad. He is really, really good at that, and he's really good at preaching. He really is. But he's not a very visionary thinker. He just doesn't think a year or two down the road. He's trying to take care of his people now. That's his gifting. I, on the other hand, can't stand to be in the hospital doing kind of visit. But I'm 5 years down the road, we're going to build 4 hospitals. So that's how I think, okay? King is your administrative side. More administrative. So if you think of like churches now, I've actually met with two pastors this afternoon who are going to be supporting us, and one guy is much more of the prophet, and the other guy is much more of the king. So the king, he's very administrative, he's very organized, so he organizes their community groups, and he organizes a lot of the financial stuff on the back end. The prophet guy, he's more the preaching and leadership development. All right, they're priests. They have other elders that are lay elders that kind of function as the priest. My former church, 121, we had a decent balance of this. Will Plitt was our pastor. He's very much a prophet. He could tell you, he could talk vision and think ahead and preach it. But man, if you were struggling and need some counseling, everyone in the church knew not to talk to Pastor Will about it. You go to talk to Pastor Mark. Am I right? Yeah, you go talk to Pastor Mark. That's just reality. It's not because Will hated people. It's because he's just bad at doing that, and he will tell you. He actually stopped being. He's the entrepreneurial planter. He went to one started and went and started something else and we did it, and he came back and did it. He can't be anywhere for more than 2 or 3 years at a time. And so when he came back, he had to be the prophet for this. He's like, it drove me crazy to be a pastor over people again, because he's just not wired to do that. He's a church planter. So it's all about gifting, but he's being used another way. Priest was our pastor Mark. He was the oldest elder. He was retired, well, semi-retired. He's got grandkids. His son-in-law is actually the lead pastor, Josh, now. But Pastor Mark, if you're struggling, you need some counseling, you need someone to pray for, you call Pastor Mark. He takes you to Panera and made you feel good about life after 2 hours. That's just Pastor Mark. And he'll hug you, shake hands. Isn't he like that? Now, our pastor Josh was the king. He was behind the scenes, administrative, made sure all the things behind the scenes run. Now, he is now the lead pastor and knows that his weakness is being the prophet. So he's trying to get other mentors and people to help him think through that and to help him in that sense. But when those 3 guys are working well together, it's a beautiful thing, because they were all maximizing the different gifting and roles and things that God had given them. So I want you to think about this, because this is actually changing how I even think about church leadership. You know, we often think, well, we get a church, so I need to hire a worship pastor, I need to hire a children youth pastor, I need to hire an evangelism missions pastor. So you think of those type of titles and roles, but what if we start thinking, it doesn't really matter those types of departments that people are overseeing. What if we hired the right people, not laid out the right job description? So if you hire the right people, those jobs get very well taken care of. Your prophet knows why you need to have a youth ministry and a worship ministry. Your priest is shepherding the lay people who are organizing those, and your king is on the behind the scenes administrating and giving kind of structural and strategic guidance to those. Yes, question.
Is it, I don't want to say is it possible, because I know it's possible, but is it effective to have someone being prophet, priest, and someone else being king? I know it's most profitable to have one, like multiple people for 3, but.
So me personally, I am high prophet, and I'm most are like 60, 40, 10. Is that right?
No.
60, 30, 10. Most are kind of like that. 60% they're prophet, 30% they're king or priest, 10% they're the other. So I'm probably like 70, 20, 10.
Okay.
I'm probably 70 prophet, 20 king. I'm probably 20 priest, and then 10 king. I do care about people. I will go visit people in the hospital. I will counsel people. I do enjoy that. I'm just not as good as someone who's that's their main thing. So I'm probably a good 70, 20, 10, maybe a 60, 30, 60, 30, 10. But anyways, usually you're not 100% one.
Okay.
Yeah, usually not. But you know which ones you're not the best at. And you say, and another thing too is smart in the church to say, you know what, I need to focus more on the prophetic role and let you focus on the priest role, let you focus on the king role. That way, all of your staff and your leadership are singularly guided going in one direction.
So
now, you may have multiple people, multiple prophets, multiple kings, multiple priests. You know, you have a larger church, you have multiple personalities coming out. But like, so I'm at a large mega church right now, so our pastor of discipleship is very much a prophet. But he is high king. He is organized, wired, structural, but he knows where the discipleship ministry, because he oversees children's ministry, youth ministry, he oversees the Bible fellowship groups and all that, so he oversees those things. So he has other guys who are fitting the more of the priest and king role, but he is a high prophet in that area, but he serves under our kind of higher prophet role of Pastor Rob. So if you know our pastor, he is probably 80 prophet and maybe 10-10 on the other two. But his role really fits what the church really needs. So even though he can do the others, and he was a church planter and done others, he's just really, really good at being prophet. So the church needs him to be more of that than anything else. So I'm only kind of bringing this out to really just kind of highlight that, just kind of think through a little bit more about who you're bringing onto your team and how you're wired yourself. And like I said, this doesn't go for just church planning. I think it can be applied to all leadership positions. All right, yes?
I like taking quizzes like that. I like doing quizzes.
So you're looking forward to this test, aren't you?
I like things like this. It's cool.
You're
Like
a
on the
king.
Facebook.
You're a king. If you will say out loud, I like quizzes, you're a king.
No, I like
Do you like spreadsheets?
Facebook. No.
If spreadsheets excite you, you're a king.
No, I like Facebook quizzes.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So no, you're not a king. You like Facebook.
No.
No, I get what you mean though, like finding out
Yeah, I
about
like-
yourself.
Oh my God, what's
Because
this?
it's self-analyzation,
Yeah.
for at least for me, is one of the hardest things that I'm lacking. So tests that'll tell me, all right, if you're being truthful, this is probably what you're better at, and then I can focus on that. But like, because if you were to ask me what are you strong at, I'd be like, sucking.
I am very strong at being not strong.
True.
So you know how last week we talked about assessment? We talked about when you kind of get going, you're assessed and you hear the questions that you're being asked, and you know, am I actually called to be a church planter? What am I called to do in that role? An assessment process will always have you take a lot of these tests and surveys. So in the one I just did for the North American Mission Board, I did one on spiritual gifts. I did one on, we're going to show you the Myers-Briggs, ENFP, that kind of thing. I did the DISC profile. I'm a big I. And I did another one. Can't remember I did 3 Strengths Finder, which I have on here as well. So yeah, you'll take a lot of those, and churches are now starting to have all their staff and other people take these kind of strength-based gifts to find out, okay, you know what, you're the youth pastor, but you're really, really gifted in something else. You might need to either split your role or transition to something else in the church. It may be. Here's a quote from the Driscoll Brochures book. I think it is their doctrine book. As a prophet, Jesus preached and taught Scripture with authority, and has now commissioned preachers filled with the Spirit to proclaim His word. As priests, this kind of gives a good little explanation. As priest, Jesus cares for people and deals with their sin compassionately and calls people to join Him in these ministries of mercy. As king, Jesus demonstrated His rule of creation through miracles along the earth, and today leads His people, the spiritual body of Christ, into all nations and cultures through church leaders, principles, and systems by the Holy Spirit and according to His word. So here's how Jesus fulfilled prophet, priest, and king, and we kind of mirror that in a way. So, all right, prophet, teaching, and vision casting sees where the church needs to go. I'll go through these quickly. Priest, counseling and care, sees how to take care of the people along the way. And king, strategy and administration, sees how to get the church to where it needs to be. There's a lot of really good articles and things that kind of explain this a little more. So Strengths Finders, I'm going to talk about a few practical tools that I found helpful that will help you as well. This one is one that I think every church staff should do this together and walk through it. We did when I was a youth pastor. It was really helpful. It actually helped me understand why I was doing certain things really poorly as a youth pastor. It also helped me understand why I struggle with certain pieces of my job here at Piedmont, because I am not a king, I'm not administrative, and coordinating an online program behind the scenes, it's a whole lot of spreadsheets, a whole lot of emails, a whole lot of checklists, and I was bad at it. That's why my checklist, when y'all came to my office, where's my checklist? In colors on the dry erase board.
Massive.
It was horrible. All right. So Strength Finder helps develop people, identify how you're wired, identifies where you find your energy, and it helps you maximize productivity. So I'm going to show you mine just as an example. So here are my Strength Finders results. You take this kind of survey test, and you get the book Strength-Based Leadership, which is one that you take in your practicum. This is one of the required books that you have to get as part of your practicum. So everyone, if you do the NACP practicum, you actually do take you read. You take the test, it gives you buy the book, it gives you a code in the back, you go online, you get the free
So I have to read this book.
Free test. You only have to read the sections under your top 5. They're like 2 pages apiece. Then you have to read the general introduction. Here's what it means. So you only have to read like maybe 80 pages total of the 300-page book. But you kind of find out, read about yourself. So these are the top order that they gave mine in. My number 1 has always been belief. I've taken this twice, and every time mine was belief. I believe strongly in the cause that I'm living for. This was compelling us to move to 2,600 miles away on faith-based financial needs. So I believe very strongly in the mission of God and His return. So I believe deeply in that, so I live my life out like that. Connectedness. I like to connect people together. It's if you know me, I like to network. Whenever you're talking and you're saying something, my mind is going to, who do I need to connect Kyle with? So whenever the intermediate with PMBA emailed me about somebody, I said, oh, I need to connect him with boom. Okay, there we go. So that's the way my brain works because I like to be connected with people. Responsibility. I am loyal to a fault, and I feel I'm the oldest child, so this kind of fits with that as well. But I feel a heavy responsibility for the job I've been given, to the point that I fear failure. To the point when if I'm failing somebody, I will resort to lying. I realize that I'm a liar. And I've been repenting of that because I was excusing my lies. Boss says, hey, how far are you along in this project? I'm about 70-80% done. In reality, I hadn't even started yet.
Going to Sheets, buying a 6-pack of Red Bull.
And it'll be done by 8 a.m. tomorrow. Man, I got to stay up all night. I was lying. And I realized that and I've had to repent. But I feel a heavy responsibility for the job I've been given. Includer. I like to bring people along to do things. I like to include people in what I'm doing. It also goes to that networking and connectedness that kind of fits. And ideation. I like to think, the first time I took it, futuristic was on here. But future kind of moved down to number 6, 7, and ideation moved up. Ideation is a little bit different. And that futuristic thinking is I can see the bigger picture, but ideation is I like to dream about it. I like to think of the ideas and then think and map. That's why I like dry erase boards. I like to map out, here's how I see a church. So I shared my story about 10 years ago and wanting to plant a church and the horrible names and all that. I was designing PowerPoints and thinking because I was an ideator. This is what I like to do. So this is me. This is not all of you. And I talked to other church planners who have done this. None of us are the same. So, and these will flesh out because you find out, like I said on the slide before, this is also where you find your energy. When I found out my job here at Piedmont that I did for 3.5 years as the E412 program coordinator, it was draining my energy on a daily basis. Not because it was a bad job, had good bosses. I knew the job I was supposed to do. It wasn't an unclear task. I was in a great working environment. They took good care of all it. So there was nothing negative. But I was not performing well at my job here. I struggled daily, was in Dr. Ashford's office, who was my direct boss, and I would say, I am failing, I can't keep my head above water, I don't know what to do. So she was having to pull the people to help me with stuff because only like 20% of my job fit with any of my strengths. So it was draining me to have to pull from a weakness, because then it takes me 3 times longer to do it. So it helps you understand, if you know this about yourself, that's why I have everyone take it in the practicum, you need to know yourself before you get into a position or a role and start saying, why am I so bad at this? It's not because you're a bad person. It's not because you're dumb. It's not because you're uneducated. It's because you're not wired to do that. Someone else is. But once you find that thing that you're wired at, so if you think about these as far as in the church planting realm, they all fit. That's why, in a way, I think God has wired me with the more apostolic, prophetic type leaning, the strengths He's given me for evangelism, apostleship, and teaching. Compared with my strengths, I was destined to be in this position because that's the way God wired me. So we're talking about wiring. This is what we're talking about. So let's progress on. I think I'm almost done here. Here's the Myers-Briggs temperament indicator. So anyways, ENFPs represent most church planters, and I have to be an ENFP, which is extrovert, intuitive, feeling, and what's the P?
Personally,
No, it's not personal. It's the opposite of judging. It means I'm not good at judgment, but you're willing to just go and take chances and do different things. So anyways, Aubrey Malphurs, in his book about church planting, written about 20 years ago, it's called The Nuts and Bolts of Church Planting, he kind of says that when they were surveying planters, the most common one that popped up, most common set was ENFPs. So if you take it, you're like, I'm not an ENFP. Dr. Pettit is the most rare combination. which is why he is such an odd guy who was kept a school alive when it should have died a decade ago. Because he's wired, he's an introvert. He does not get his energy from a crowd like I do. All right, but he was a church planter. He did it very well, very successful. Planted 2 churches. So, anyways, you don't have to be this to do it. It's just this was the most common. I just wanted to highlight that in case you do happen to take that test one day. Your personal profile, high D&I. So you take it's called DISC, D-I-S-C, dominating. What's the I stand? I had it somewhere. I can't remember what it is. But anyways, I'm a big I. What's the S? Anyway, I can't remember. It's been a long time since I looked at this. It's not intellectual, but it's not that because I'm not smart. Anyway, I can't remember what they are. But high D and I seem to function best. I know that D is a more dominating personality. Oh, I is influencer. And so I like to influence people more than dictate and do that kind of thing. It's just a different kind of leadership. But it's more of your temperament. So here's our first thing to kind of wrap up. Was a church planter. Christian leader leads from character before skill. So all these things we talked about don't mean a hill of beans if you're not in God's word, loving Jesus, passionately pursuing Christ likeness, and caring about people. If you don't, it doesn't matter. You have all these skills. You have the ENFP. You can be a big D. You can have all the right spiritual gifts. You can do all that kind of stuff to be the mix for a church plant or whatever it is. But if you don't have godly Christian, gospel-centered character, it means nothing. So we're going to end this whole class, this whole course, next week. Our last lecture is next week. Hooray! All right, week 12. We're going to talk about character.
Is that when our
Is there a last
mission
week?
stuff is due?
Life on Mission stuff is you'll present on it because we have next week, then we have Thanksgiving.
That's what we do our last week.
So next week we have the last lecture, week 12, the church planter character. Then you have Thanksgiving, it's a Thursday, so there's no class. And then you have to, you'll be presenting on your discipleship relationships. So remember, you need to have your discipleship relationships done and your journal updated. I checked again. There are still like 3 of you who have not even opened the journal. I am fearful, and just know your grade will be affected.
The journal for
Okay, you have
our
to-
discipleship thing?
I'm just saying, man,
It's all under.
just know there are 7 other people who are online who may not have done it, but I looked,
Oh, I have.
and there are like 2 or 3 people who haven't. Okay, if you're one of them, I'm very fearful because how are you going to remember what you did 8 weeks ago? So get that thing up.
I thought,
Wait, I thought we were
I
handing
knew
it
I had talked about, like I wrote notes.
Yeah.
and I
Okay.
don't remember.
Yeah, I have my outlines written out, and they're
As long as
very-
if you have it written down, in a hand, or you got it in a little note on your phone or something, cool. But just know that if I notice that the quality, I can see the date you published it, so I know that you did it for me. I'm not going to judge you, and I'm not going to take points off because you submitted 8 weeks late. But I'll be able to read and tell that you have no clue what happened that first night. I'll just be able to read and tell. So if you remember, it's okay. I will know about the quality of your journal entry, but those are due before Thanksgiving. I think the 21st, the Monday. I think that's when they're due. I will be checking it though until on Thanksgiving break when I have a little more free time. Okay. So yes, question.
I did mine back in October and we're done. I thought we were handing in a hard copy to you.
No, there's a
'Cause I
link.
have all mine written out, and I thought we had to hand it in to you. Like,
In Blackboard, there is an online journal you're supposed to type in.
where?
It's at the bottom of every weekly assignment. If you go into the weekly assignment folder and look down in the lecture, all those things.
We're
It's,
supposed to open that?
yeah, that's the whole point of the Blackboard. Is open and know what you're supposed to do.
Let's Blackboard.
And it has how do you know the 5 questions then?
I can do mine tonight. Wait, I thought it was on the syllabus. I thought we were just supposed to write what we did.
Go into week 11, scroll to the bottom, and look at the Discipleship Relationship Journal. Click it and open it, and read the 5 questions you're supposed to answer each week, or for each
It's
session.
not hard.
Not hard. You're updating. You're telling me what you did.
I got my girls to talk more this last week, but I had to go around and specifically make each one of them say something.
Okay, good. Well, next week I'm going to give you, and I hope to have it posted on Blackboard sooner. I'm gonna have like a rubric guide for your presentation. It's going to be short. It's going to be like 5 minutes. It's basically going to be kind of, let us all know what you did, who you did it with, and you're going to answer a couple, 3 different questions related to things that you learned about discipling somebody or a group, things that the material helped you with, that kind of thing. And you want to present that PowerPoint or something, I'm going to record everybody, and so the online students are going to have to record a video of themselves doing it. I'll record you here in class, and then upload yours to my YouTube, and so that way you're done. So you don't have to worry about making your own video. We'll do yours here because you'll be here, but I'll burp my chili from earlier. Sorry. It's good chili, spicy too.
What if what we learned from doing it really has nothing to do with their growth or?
I want to know how God stretched you.
Okay.
I want to know what you learned about. Okay, you see it? So.
I never saw I don't know why, maybe it's just, all I ever saw was the questions. And it's like it never took me to the part where it's like everything was collaborative where you can submit something.
Okay, so
I never saw the grading thing to the side. I just always saw the
So do you see where it says create entry or post entry or something?
Yeah.
So you just go there and I need 8 entries.
I can do that tonight.
Yeah. So anyway, so that's your update. Just know that it is due the 21st, but I won't be checking it until after Thanksgiving. Okay. So if you need to take some time, do it before Thanksgiving. Enjoy Thanksgiving. Don't be doing homework on that. I'm not opening my computer. I'm not checking email that day. So anyway.
Catch up on discussion boards.
Catch up on. Hey, yes, your discussion boards. Make sure you're all caught up on those.
Make sure you cut them in your.
And lastly, just remember that you are supposed to do 10 comments on the Luke Journal from someone else's entry. So just make sure you do that as well.
What does that all do?
That's all due at the end of the semester. Check your syllabus. The discussion boards are due each week. But I've done a poor job of keeping up with them, so they'll kind of all be graded at once. Your journal entries are all due at the end. Your Luke Journal is all going to be graded at the end. Basically, what I do with the Luke Journal, I don't spend time reading because this was going to be like 100-something pages because of how many students. So I don't go through and read every word because we kind of discuss it each week and different things. But I do go and count your number of entries, and I do like what Dr. Bowman used to do when he would grade our papers. I probably didn't know this about him, but he has passed. We can't get in trouble for this. But if he had a class of 30 students, he really only graded 8 papers, and so you knew you're the one he graded because you had a B-. If you had an A, which most everyone got. And so I was super surprised one time when I did not get an A with no marks on a like a 5-page book review because I was one of the chosen ones. What I do with your Luke Journal, I don't read all 24 posts you do. I go through and I count the times I see your name. I actually search on the Google Doc for how many times Kyle Anderson shows up. That's why I have you put your name. If it shows up 24 times in the count, I know you did 24 entries. Then I go through and I read a few sample of yours to make sure you're tracking through, nothing too heretical, that kind of thing. If I don't read all 24, I'll probably read a good 6 or 7 of everybody's. So that's how I grade those, just letting you know. And if I notice that you really didn't put a lot of thought into it consistently, then I start taking 5, 10 points off for quality. But you do have to comment on 10 because I also print off and count the number of comments. So anyways.
It's going to be Hutch, and the comment is going to be hashtag.
That's fine.
Wait, what? What about me?
So anyways, don't pick on each other. All right, so let's go ahead and end that lecture. That's a good point to end. Take a break, take a break.
Let's take a quiz.
My 10 comments are going to.
Oh yes, should we look?
Yes. Yes.
So let me
I wanted to.
Can I go?
I'll keep recording this. So if you're online, you don't have to watch this part, but I will have it on screen. So if you're online, feel free to exit out. These links are all in Blackboard. You can search them yourself. But if you want to hear us talk about it, actually, I'm gonna turn the camera to me. That's scary. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. It'd be up close. Okay, so let me.
No.
Hey, we're still recording. We're still recording. So let me see if I have these tests on here, and I can show you real fast, and then we'll take a. Actually, when we're done with this, we're going to end the night.
Bruh.
You upset that I'm ending the night early?
No.
He's upset.
I am upset, man. Time with you is so scarce. I gotta take it all while I can get it.
Whatever.
I mean it, man.
How did I meet it? I'm sorry, I didn't have this available. What?
Mm-hmm.
I thought I made that.
Mm-hmm.
My bad. Man, no one emailed me to tell me that I missed turning on the button so you could see this stuff. I had this ready the other day. I'm like, oh yeah, I have it ready on time. Great. And I didn't let you even see it. Man, I fail as a professor. I'm so sorry. My brain has been so scattered this semester.
Well,
I'm moving my young family across the continent. I'm scared. No.
Excuse
All right,
me.
it is. It's lame excuse. All right, so capabilities.
All right.
So there's all your assignments overview. I'm sorry that I missed this. So, all right, this is last year's lecture. That's why I left it here until I replace it with a new one from now. But how long? So here's your APEST. Unable to connect. Okay, spiritual gift test.
Wait, that's not.
Here you go, spiritualgiftstest.com. All right.
Faith's really lost.
Are you,
Not on my thing.
Refresh it.
hold on, no, I know why. Because I didn't make that one available either. Because I didn't want online students to watch that lecture and be confused because it's last year's. Always keep it up.
What's the difference?
Because here's the trick that I've done this past semester. I keep this closed until I actually upload the video for this week. But I keep the one from the last time I taught it in case like I get deathly ill on that Thursday night. And that way you guys can come in and actually watch it. You can watch, it'll be from last class I taught, but so I always do that just in case like something crazy happens and I can't make it.
How
But
much did it change?
this time it actually changed significantly because this is only the second time I've taught this class, and so I probably changed up 50% of it. A lot of the assignments changed. I had 4 short quarterly assignments, whereas now I have your big discipleship relationship. Last time the discipleship relationship was actually an optional assignment. You either chose it or a book-related assignment. But I learned from doing it the first time that it was really good for having everybody do it. So changed that up. We changed the textbook. We added Saturate and dropped some other book. I don't remember which one. And then the Discipleship Relationship Journal became a really, really big assignment where last time it wasn't. So the APEST, I'm not sure why that one didn't work. APESTtest.com. Maybe they took it down. All right, I'll Google that because I know the actual. I think they just changed the websites when they did. All right, so spiritualgiftstest.com. I found this pretty good. Now, what you just need to know, you start looking at the about us and all this. They do believe like in healing and tongues and that kind of stuff, and so they have it on there. And that's another thing. I am not a full cessationist. I'm not ashamed to admit it because I have met and talked with missionaries that I trust who have been in places where they or someone around them start speaking in another language or understood someone from another language, and they're like, how did that just happen? I've heard those things. So I don't think the gift of tongues is completely done, but I think God is using it in a very different way. And He's not using it in North America how our Pentecostal brothers are treating it. FYI, it's an actually known language that people are speaking. That's a rabbit trail that I don't need to get into. But anyways, just know that. So if you take this test, just know that they theologically believe that. But this is a good test. The test part is really good.
Are they the people who sell the anointing oil?
They might.
That stuff's good for your.
All right, so you go to your spiritual gifts profiler. If you go here and take the test, it'll open up, and you can take it as an adult or a student. I actually had some of my teens in my youth group go through it. That was really eye-opening for them to find out. Oh,
You would take adult.
God has. You would take the adult one. Take the adult test. You just click. They give you a little explanation. You put in your information if you want to log in, or you just continue as a guest, which you can do that. And you start going through these questions. You answer them, always true to never true, and you get a response. It also will email you. That's why you fill it out. It'll email you it'll give you like a ranking number and tell you what your top however many are. So it's a really good one. I've taken this one twice, and it's consistently good. Huh?
You want us to give them?
Yeah, I mean, it'll just email you the results, but it'll pull it up here as well.
So I want to take a picture of it.
Yeah, you can take a screenshot or whatever, print as a PDF, whatever you want to do. So that's the spiritual gifts is a really good test. Strength Finder, all right. So this is to the if you want to buy the book, you will have to do this and buy a book because when you buy the book, Strength Based Leadership, you get a code in the back that lets you go here to the website and you go to use your access code. You put it's like a 20-digit number. You put it in. Take the test. It takes about 20-30 minutes to take it, and it gives you your results. And it also gives you. It's really nice. It not only just gives you your top 5, it lists and explains what it means to have belief. So you start reading it. I'm like, yeah, this is me. How in the world did it know me? So it gives some really good explanation. And the full report is probably a good 12, 15 pages of what it gives. It's really, really good. That's why you have to pay for it. So if you buy the book, you've paid for it. Or a church can go on and pay like a group rate and have other people not buy the book, but they get access. So that's a Strength Finder test. Is really, really good. Here's Myers-Briggs if you want to know a little bit more about it. Here it gives the different types. So I think I think Dr. Pettit is a ISFJ. Quiet, friendly, responsible, conscientious. Maybe not. No, loyal, considerate. I can't remember which one he is. So I am the ENFP, warmly enthusiastic and imaginative. I don't know about warmly, but I'm enthusiastic, I would say. I think sometimes I'm too little giddy. I'm sure the online folks watching this are like, he's a dumb kind of professor. Who is this guy? He's kind of a clown. Yeah, I just like being around people. I'm an extrovert, so I get my energy from you guys. Warmly enthusiastic, imaginative, see life as full of possibilities, make connections between events and information very quickly. So it kind of gives you a little bit about yourself. And then, anyways, that's a good one. You might have to pay. I did it as a church group, and so I don't know if we had to pay. And then NAM had me take it as well, but it was paid for what I paid through them. So, and there's another one called Sarah Myers-Briggs. It's the same kind of test and results, but it's called Golden Personality Indicator, something like that. And I took it, but it gives you the same results. It's kind of the same test, but slightly different in some ways. But anyway, there's the Myers-Briggs. Personal profile. What is this? Oh, who are the best churchmen? This is just a blog post from someone I found. This might have been about the ENFP part, about how more church planners were like this. No, let me do a Command F and see. This is where they have it. No, it's not it. I know Aubrey Malfer said it in one of his books. I remember reading that part. All right, so there's a link for you. So let me find the APEST. Fivefold. That's it. Okay, it's got movie. It's called Fivefold Survey. So this is the. Okay, so it's developed by Mike Green of 3DM, and Alan Hirsch helped develop this. But you can take this right here. It's called the Fivefold Leadership idea, whatever it is. But you take this fivefold survey, and it gives you kind of lets you know if you're a high apostle, prophet, evangelist, shepherd, teacher. So, anyways, it's really helpful. It's been a while since I've taken this one. So here you got 80 questions. I'm good at listening and taking in what people say. If you say no, you're not a shepherd. A shepherd is good at listening and taking in what people say. I'm not. So, anyways, so here's the bad thing about these tests. I know how to manipulate them to get the result I want. And if you take enough of them, you'll figure out that if I start answering questions toward this, even though they're not true,
That's why it's hard to answer.
so it's hard to do, but you have to say, honestly, for each question, think as objective as you can. You know what? I would love to say I'm good at listening and taking what people say. And if I'm talking to my wife, I'm like, yeah, I hear you, honey. I'm listening, but I'm really bad at listening to my wife. So, anyways, I'd have to, on here, say rarely, to be honest.
We
But
took a small, like a thing sort of like this when the last year when the Piedmont Gospel campaign before was that, trying to see like strengths of people, and I had to ask some people around me like, what do you think of this? And like I was like, ouch. Like some of it was kind of making me overbearing.
Yeah, people know your weaknesses.
okay, there we go. I updated the link, so it should work now.
Yay.
All right, I think we're so there at the bottom. There's your Discipleship Relationship Journal. So everything is updated. Sorry, it's a little bit late. I will have this lecture up here tonight, but that's all for tonight.